So when it comes to content, you really should be seeing bottom line growth. And on top of that, in the industry, you should be gaining trust.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. Or even if you haven't, and you just want to know that a little bit more about what good, happy marketing is. As we cover a whole host of marketing topics, I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch. We'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. That robots will end civilization as we know it? Quite a heavy question to start off with, apologies. So I'll tell you what, let's just talk about chatbots and what they are for now and make our way up to that one about civilization and the end of it as we know it. But only after we meet Julia McCoy. Julia's backstory is a little different. Only 7 years ago, Julia started her own company and never looked back. Now, she has nearly 100 members of staff on board in just 7 years. The company I'm talking about is Express Writers, and this is a writing agency that creates content helping to build a brand's presence online. Julia found her forte of online writing and a passion for the written word, which led her to start such an amazing company. So, Julia, can you spell Forte?
Can I spell Forte? So what's crazy, I recently learned about this word and it's actually pronounced fort, like I'm in my fort, but it's what it means. So, something that you excel at, something you're strong at, but it's pronounced fort. And a bunch of writers along with me, we recently learned this in a Facebook group. So the spelling of fort is Forte.
Right.
And it's not pronounced forte. So weird.
Well, been saying it wrong my whole life.
Me too.
Exactly. There you go. So, speaking of Forte, tell us your story. What's been the formula that's brought you to this stage of your career as CEO at Express Writers?
Oh, that is such a big question. Well, I'll try not to ramble on for a long time because there's a lot involved in my story, a lot of different aspects. And I think where I came from, I'll start there.
Okay.
So this is actually a book I'm writing this year. It's going to come out in 2019. And it's how I started my business while I was actually inside of a cult. And wow. I left that cult a little over 6 years ago now. And this cult was very oppressive. I was wearing skirts. My sister and I never wore pants in our life. So, we were like full on Amish, but it wasn't Amish. It was another institutionalized religion that my dad kind of came up with on his own, and he called it independency. So while I was in his house in that environment, which was just crazy, and that's part of the book I'm writing, is the story of how I was brought up and what happened. While I was in that environment, I was going to college. Weirdly enough, they let me go to college. And in the middle of going to college, I was failing. So my degree was nursing. I was going to get an RN degree. And I was a little bit more than halfway through, and I started just failing all my classes. And that came down to, it was something I really didn't want to do. And I was learning that, but I was pressured to do it by the people I lived with. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't have a choice. I had to keep going through it. But one morning, I woke up and I literally asked myself, what can I do that I'm going to enjoy doing the rest of my life? And that question I just acted on. And it was as simple as that. And within the next 3 hours, I had created a freelance profile. And within the next 3 months, I taught myself online writing. And by the end of those 3 months, I had more clients than what I could handle. And I was earning triple per month than anything I'd earned before doing odd jobs here and there. And I was working part time at McDonald's at the time. So I was literally within an hour, I was making triple what I was making in an hour working in a restaurant. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. And while I was still, picture me in this environment, just a lot of abuse was going on, physical, mental, verbal, a lot of abuse every day. And I still figured out how to follow my passion. And the next step to that was, okay, how do I handle all of this work that I have? And my next logical reaction was, let me start a business. So within literally the next 5 minutes, I came up with a business name. And that business name was Express Writers. And it all hit me like a light bulb, each of these moments. And every time that light bulb turned on in my mind, I just went forward and followed that light bulb path. So I started Express Writers. And then in the first year, after I failed college, I was able to just put all of my time into building my business. And then in the next year, after starting my business, I actually made the decision to escape the cult, which I had to do in the middle of the night. And the means I had to escape the cult, I had from my business. And I would never have been able to get out and survive on my own if I didn't have those financial means that my business gave me.
Wow.
So that's the story. I tried to nutshell it.
That's that's an amazing story, and you are the first person I think I've interviewed that's been in a cult. So,
Oh, wow.
in some ways, congratulations.
It's not a story you hear a lot.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Just moving on ever so slightly. Then, can you explain what Express Writers does?
Yes, absolutely. So we are a writing agency. So we create content for clients that helps build their brand online. And so it's all online. It serves an online purpose. So it helps build their presence, whether that's a blog, a website, and even ad copy. We create content that helps build their presence. And by now, 7 years later, after starting this little business idea I had, my mission at the beginning was I have to find writers who enjoy and love writing. And on top of that, they have to be at least as good as me. So
Yeah.
that was my goal. And my goal since has kind of evolved to include training and mentoring our writers once I personally interview them. And it's still me interviewing every single writer, which is in the tens of thousands by now. So by now we have 95 writers, almost 100 on staff. But that is what we do, online content.
Well, that's fantastic. In 7 years, that's amazing. Moving on to actual copywriting, then you took it up, and within about 3 months, you were doing it and doing it successfully. Can copywriting be taught, or do you think it's a natural skill to have? And do you think you've got a natural skill, or was it? Did you find that natural skill in you, or was it a case of you just literally were taught it, or you taught yourself it? If that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Can it be taught or do you have to have natural skills? I think that's a great question, especially when it comes to copywriting, which copywriting nowadays is kind of like its own industry, just like, can sales skills be taught or do you have to have natural skills for it? I think it comes back to your goal. And if your goal is just to delve into writing for a hobby, maybe to use it because it's a facet of your job, but it's not the crux of your job. Or if your goal is, I want to be a writer and I want to make a full time income, then you really have to enjoy writing. And that means you have to be a natural at it. And everything else on top of that can be taught. So if you know how to form a good sentence and you enjoy doing that, the other skill sets of SEO, optimizing this for Google, maybe researching the right keyword, how to put that keyword in that content, how to create headers, how to create an engaging blog intro. That's the crux of a good blog. That's what's going to hook someone, how to create a great headline. All of those things surrounding writing can absolutely be taught. And that's something, I've been testing. I've launched my first course a little over a year ago, and I launched my first writing course just a couple months ago. So what we're seeing is that people come in And this goes back to my books as well. My first book I wrote in 2016, So You Think You Can Write. That book title is challenging. So in the first chapter, I explain how everything is built on a foundation of passion and really enjoying to write. And that goes back to like the early days of storytelling, like back in the days of Rome, way, way back in BC, the people who were writing and whose writing we still read today, they were sitting around campfires and telling stories. They were the ones that were writing and telling and shaping these stories, and they just loved it. So it's kind of like, if you go way, way back in time, that's still true. And today, like the best writers are those that just, they kind of have that natural love for words. So you absolutely have to have that as a foundation if your goal is really to make money writing and doing that for a living.
I love the way you started that answer with you talking about blogs and titles and headers and comms and more digital, and then you ended up just going back way back to the art of storytelling.
Big contrast.
but the fact that it's been around forever, and that hasn't changed the fact that stories and the way we tell them do actually sell, and they mean things and people connect to them. And I think it's easy to forget that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a natural process. That's human. I mean, telling a story that engages someone else, perks up their ears, gets them excited. Like that's kind of a natural human thing that almost all of us have, because like what do we do when we relax, hang out with our friends, start a conversation? It's usually like, oh, something happened to me today.
Yeah.
And everyone is listening. So that storytelling, it's almost like we all have it and it's inside. And to turn that into writing, you really do, like some of our top writers in our team who are making the most money, who are working with the most clients, like they excelled way back in junior high school at writing. That was their favorite class. And a lot of times that is a sign of a really good writer. Like, did you enjoy writing in school? If you hated it, maybe you're not cut out for full-time writing. You have to love it.
I wasn't the best writer at school. So for people like me or people in business that aren't great writers or haven't actually got the time or the time and effort to put into great copywriting, what's the best process for getting the greatest results from externally outsourcing content?
That is another great question. I think I've had this question presented several different ways, and some people ask it in the way of, well, how are you going to write in my voice? I'm outsourcing to you. How do you know what's in my mind? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck when they think of outsourcing writing. How are you going to write for me and still make my brand, make everything represent who I am? And for me, that comes back to when you think of things we hire professionals to do, like you wouldn't try to fix your roof yourself if your roof was caving in and you needed a professional. You probably wouldn't unless you were trained in how to do that. And that really applies to online content as well. If you really want to present yourself in a way that will attract leads, sales, traffic, and long-term authoritative industry positioning, you're not going to write that content yourself if you're not good at writing. Or if, like, you can even be good at writing, but still not know how to optimize it, what word length works best for what kind of pages, how to create like the best tagline on your homepage. I write books and I still bring in my writers for that. I'm like, okay, how can I write the best tagline? I need to talk to Nikki. That's one of my writers. So you want to bring in the pros, and that's what you want to think of when it comes to outsourcing content, and not just get hung up on, okay, I'm outsourcing to a writer that may not know what's in my head, because that's where a lot of our clients, especially new clients, get stuck. So if you can jump over that word outsourcing and think of, I'm getting the help of a professional, that is a huge reason to outsource and then see success from it.
So you've got some sort of success, but how would you analyze that content to quantify the success, other than the obvious, the pounds, shillings, and pence, or dollars and cents, if you like?
That's another awesome question.
I'm on fire today.
I love these questions. They get right to the heart of big points. So the question, what's the best way to analyze content success, right?
Hmm.
So, for us, that definitely comes down to bottom line growth. So it does come down to, how many sales are you seeing from the leads you're getting? And it's so crazy, but if your content isn't positioned right, if it's really weak, you really see that in your bottom line. Like for the longest time, whenever I started out 7 years ago, I was really not the best blogger. And I've really honed that skill over the last 2 or 3 years. So in the beginning, I was kind of a poor content writer. And we saw that in our bottom line sales. We weren't really doing well. We were struggling. So when it comes to content, you really should be seeing bottom line growth. And on top of that, in the industry, you should be gaining trust. So what does trust look like? Trust usually looks like engagement. How many people are commenting on your blog post? How many people are resharing it? All of that. And, some people call that vanity metrics, but really that's just a sign of they trust you enough to share this with their followers. And they trust you enough to put in the time to leave a comment and give their thoughts on what you wrote about. So think about looking for those trust elements. Am I getting traction? Am I getting engagement? If not, how can I kind of reposition and go for a higher quality level? And with us, like whenever we're looking for that bottom line growth, whether that's for client content or for our content, it really does come down to that, the quality. If the quality is there, usually we're seeing that bottom line growth. So if you're not, upgrade your quality, get that professional. Maybe if you're doing video content or some other kind of content, look at more apps, more software, more features you can add to your content. Subtitles. I mean, we're talking about content here, but that's an example of like adding another feature that's going to help you build that trust and then get that bottom line growth because, more people are now going to engage with your content.
I think what you said there about vanity metrics, that's absolutely bang on, really, because they can be seen as vanity metrics, but they are a good measurement of a particular part in a process, being the engagement. And like you were saying, if people are sharing it and liking it, they like and trust you. And at the heart of any
Yes.
good marketing, that is fundamentally what you're looking for people to know, like, and trust you. So although I do agree they are vanity metrics, they do play a role in setting markers for where you want to be.
Yes, 100%. And I think what's crazy is that's actually more true today than years ago. And years ago, people thought that shares really wouldn't matter, and that was just a vanity metric in the future. But it's kind of like we've gone backwards in time because now shares mean trust, and trust is actually harder to earn than
Hmm.
ever in our digital age because of like so many false promises going out on social media, so many people presenting like a Lamborghini lifestyle, and it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yep.
So that trust is so much harder to gain. And even if someone's not reading your content but they're sharing it, that can actually be a good sign, as crazy as that sounds, because they trust you enough to put out content on their profile that you've written without even reading it. So that's another, even if they're not reading it, but they're sharing it. Wait, that's not a vanity metric. That means they trust you enough to just put it out without even reading it. That's almost like where you should be with content. Like that is one of the highest meters of success, is when people trust you enough to just say, this is great, and they don't even have to read it.
You were saying before about being a poor blog writer, and then you built up confidence over time and you got better and better. Has your writing style changed over the years?
Yes, absolutely. I would almost quantify it more as evolving. And I think that's kind of a result of what happens when you put in a lot of effort into anything. You get better at it, you evolve. So that's kind of what happened. At the beginning, this is all a self-taught career path, as we already discussed. Like that's how I started. I enjoy writing. That was my basis. And I'm like, okay, how can I make a living doing this? So at the beginning, I made a lot of errors. Yeah, some of my content was nothing short of garbage, and it still went out. And over time, I learned what quality looked like, and I studied benchmarks. And a lot of benchmark studies have showed what kind of content makes it to the top. And if you study those results, like out of 20,000 SERPs, out of 20,000 positions in the SERPs, there are several qualities that make up content that sticks to the top. And that kind of content is always comprehensive. And if you look at what is in those top three results of Google, it also has lots of visuals, subheaders to break it up. So all of those things I had to study and absorb what was working and then kind of adapt my writing style and just increase the quality every single year. And in the last year, every single year, it's like I set a higher bar. And this year, our bar is set the highest it's ever been. And we are investing, tons of time in one content piece now. And we're seeing a lot of return. So over time, quality should increase. I mean, that's almost true with almost any kind of trade.
On to, well, hopefully people listening are doing some kind of assignment, preferably in marketing. If they're not, I'm not quite sure why they're listening. Probably because you're on here. More than
You're
anything.
too kind.
No, not at all. So, what tips can you provide anyone that has to write an assignment but is struggling to get actual words onto paper?
Ooh, I would say for that, sometimes it's better just to put the whole thing down and give your mind a break. So, what does that look like? What does actually, walking away from it look like? For me, that's like getting some fresh air outside, or as silly as it sounds, taking a hot shower and like that steam, or if you're outside, outside air, all of those things are triggers that can help like jumpstart creativity. So, what is it that helps you like just kind of recharge or reset your brain? So, if I'm sitting stuck in content, like just kind of mired, I can't create a great headline, I'm really stuck, I put it up. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is try to just keep going when there's nothing there, because your brain really needs a reset. And I've studied this. I've read a couple of books on the idea process. And the idea process isn't just something you can kind of force out of your head. You really need to give your body and your mind time to come up with those great ideas, the ones that are really going to resonate and, really make a difference. So if that's your goal, creating something that's going to be great, it's really good to put some time and think about it in stages. So the first day, maybe just your ideas come out, and that might look like garbage. That's okay. Then give your mind that overnight break. Let it reset. Go start with time at the gym or outside, a walk outside in fresh air, or take a shower, and then come back to it. And you will be surprised how much more quickly you can actually generate great content by thinking of it in those two stages, and then in between those stages, letting your brain reset. And I will say, like, that is one of the reasons in the early days I was writing content that did not read well, was because I was trying to force it all out of me in a day. And like, our brains were just not meant to do that.
Sure, I can relate to that. I'm going to tell you a story here. Probably shouldn't share this, but here we go. So I love taking a shower, and for ages it was like, why do I love this so much? Why on earth do I love this? And I come out bouncing. One, because of what you're saying, it's almost like a reset. But two, because I know that I can't take my phone into the shower. So I can't touch it. I can't read anything. I can't be distracted. So it's the only place, because you don't want it to get wet. It's a bit sad funny. That I know, but there you go.
It's a forced break from technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Until they provide something that's waterproof or whatnot, and then we're all doomed. Speaking of technology, do you think voice is going to change how we create content?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's another excellent question, especially for where we're at with content this year, 2018, going into 2019, and even what's coming in the future. So like, for the biggest reason behind this trend is that so many people have these devices in their home, Google Home, Alexa, and they're talking to these devices to get results from search engines. So that is a huge difference in how we are actually searching up content and looking at answers. So the keywords look very different than what they used to look like just a couple years ago. Keyword strings have gotten longer, which is actually a really good it's a good piece of information for us content creators, because long keyword tails, these long phrases, have lower competition. So there's less millions of pages in Google for, a 5-word keyword string than like a 2-word keyword string, which has millions and millions of results, lots of competition, top sites in the top 3. So these longer tail keywords, it's going to be easier to create content that ranks in the top, as long as we're sticking to that rule of quality and comprehensiveness at all times, because that is what surfaces over and over to the top of Google. So that's really the biggest trend that I'm seeing as I'm reading, like, Brian Dean's latest guide on voice search. This is what he's saying, and other experts in the field. And with our own client content, we see this as well, longer keyword strings. So thinking about optimizing for those kinds of keywords, and thinking about even going a step further, there are a lot of keywords that are great to write content for that have no data. And what that means is, usually to look up a good keyword, we use some kind of tool like SEMrush. One of my favorites is the Mangles suite. They have some awesome tools. But whenever we look up a keyword phrase like, what is the closest pet groomer to me? What is the best pet groomer in Austin, Texas? That is such a long keyword phrase. There's actually no data on it yet in these tools. So you might think, oh, there's no data, there's no search volume. No, that's actually not true. And one way you can actually see if the keyword has search data is by pasting it into Google. And if you see any kind of results, like it can be 2 pages, those results verify, yes, this keyword does have some data. People are searching it. And again, if you're competing against 2 pages versus 2 million, you have a much higher chance at ranking. So thinking about those kinds of keywords, that's what we want to optimize our content for these days and going into the future.
That's a cool little tip there, which is brilliant. Julia,
thanks.
Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Uh-oh, I think so.
It'll be fine. Name one must-read business book.
Oh, that's good. I would have to say Growth Hacker Marketing, must read. Okay. It is so awesome. One of my favorites.
What was the last thing you Googled?
I think it was how to carve a pumpkin, because that's coming up and I'll have to do that with my toddler in about a week.
Excellent. I like that answer. That's cool. What is your most used app at the moment?
I would have to say Slack. That's how we manage our remote team, and we have, so many people. It's such a great app to message, call, and communicate with all of our remote team members.
A lot of people are saying project management or communication tools at the moment when I ask that question, which is quite interesting.
Oh, interesting.
What is your favorite SEO tool?
Ooh, I'd have to say SEMrush by far, just because of all of the features. You not only get keyword research, but you can also track every single page that's ranking in Google. And like at a glance, you can see if it's in the featured snippets, if it's in Google Images, like you can see where it's at in the SERP, not just where it's ranking, but also like where exactly it's found. So SEMrush by far, and they're always evolving. They're adding more data. It's just a very strong tool with a great leadership team.
And finally, give us your favorite keyword of all time.
Oh my gosh. There's 2 directions I could go. I could go like the craziest keyword I've written for, or I could go like the keyword that's brought in the best results for us.
Craziest.
Yeah. Okay. So in my first year of content writing, I had clients in in all kinds of industries. And there was one article I had to write for a guest blog publication for one of my clients. And the keyword was black trash bag. I'm
I
not
love it.
kidding you. And I had to figure out, like, in 500 words, how creative can I get with a black trash bag? And that was pretty hard.
Oh, but they're the best, though. I
Yes,
take it you took a few walks and
absolutely.
showers during that writing.
Well, that was my first year, so
Oh
I
wow.
should have, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just
Fair
tried to get
enough.
it all out.
Marvelous. Julia, it's been great talking to you. One final question: if people want to find out more about Express Writers, or your courses, or your books, or get in touch with you, where's the best places to go?
Well, you can visit our site, expresswriters.com. My blog is expresswriters.com/write-blog. My podcast is also the same name, Write Podcast. And the best way to kind of see what I'm up to, what I'm working on, the most recent pieces I've written, courses, all that good stuff, I would say either follow me on Instagram or Twitter. Those are my two favorite social media profiles. On Twitter, I'm at Julia E. McCoy, and on Instagram, I'm Femme Entrepreneur.
Julia, it's been fantastic talking to you today. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge. Absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Peter. This was great.
Here are my content takeaways with that chat with Julia McCoy. We spoke about a light bulb moment. Have you had yours yet? If not, don't panic. It will come. The most important thing is to keep going. Now, content creation and storytelling is massively important within marketing today. And so many people are doing it themselves, and that's fine, as long as they know what they are actually doing. If not, bring in the pros. Take fixing your roof, for example. The chances are you wouldn't tackle that on the limited expertise, unless you're a roofer, that you have. You'd call in a professional, and content creation is no different. It is so important. Cannot stress that enough. Now, there are many ways to analyse your content other than just pure income, and Julia described a few of these. So you have lead generation, bottom line sales and growth, for example. Just slightly the same as income, but then again, slightly different depending on how you look at it. And engagement, shares, and likes can be important. Basically, gaining trust through content. Now, I know this last one is a little bit inside the vanity metrics bracket, but as long as these metrics are seen as just part of your analysis, you can gain valuable insight into your strategy by reviewing them. Just don't rely on them solely. And when writing an assignment or essay, get everything down, even if you think it's rubbish, then walk away. We mentioned this before on a top tip in a previous episode. Walking away, getting some space between you and your work can recharge and reset the brain. If you start to do this in a kind of rinse and repeat cycle, it'll start to become second nature and really help you in completing a great and amazing assignment. So let's talk about chatbots. And what is a chatbot? Well, you may have heard it called another term: smartbot, talkbot, chatterbot, bot, IM bot, interactive agent, conversational interface, or artificial conversational entity. Basically, I think what we're getting from that is it's either got bot in it somewhere, or there's a lot of poncy words stuck together that we don't really understand. So let's stick with chatbot for now. And a chatbot is a computer program that mimics conversation with people using artificial intelligence. So this is via audio or copy. And they're going to transform the way we interact with the internet through a series of self-initiated tasks and conversations. And what we're going to do is look at an example in a minute, a very heightened example. But I just want to break this down for you first. What we are saying is that instead of having a conversation with a human over the internet, we are chatting to software that has been programmed to respond to particular phrases the majority of consumers will use when doing a particular task. Okay, now let's crank it up another level. The most recent incarnation of these chatbots is what Google's calling Google Assist or Google Assistant. And this works in a slightly different way, in that the user has asked Google to arrange a hair appointment for them. And then the chatbot takes over. So this is what happened.
So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.